The world watches with bated breath as events unfold before our eyes. The map of Europe, once thought unchanging, is being redrawn in the flames of war, with borders shifting rapidly. The conflict in Ukraine, brutal and unprovoked, is not merely a regional crisis, but a humanitarian catastrophe of epic proportions. It's a seismic event, sending shockwaves across the globe and reshaping the geopolitical landscape in unexpected ways. It's not just about territory, although territory is certainly at stake, but also about sovereignty and national identity. It's about power, principles, and the future of the international order, with global leaders trying to navigate these turbulent waters. The outcome of this war will determine not only the fate of Ukraine, but also the shape of global politics for decades, perhaps even centuries. It's a stark reminder that the post-Cold War era, with its promises of peace and stability, is over, leaving a dangerous void. We have entered a new era, defined by uncertainty, volatility, and the resurgence of great power competition, where alliances are tested. What's happening in Ukraine is a tragedy for the Ukrainian people, but it's also a wake-up call for the world, a call to action and vigilance. To understand the current crisis, we need to delve into the complex history of Ukraine, a land at the crossroads of empires. For centuries, Ukraine has been a stage for disputes, its fertile plains and strategic location coveted by neighboring powers. From the Cossack Hetmanate to the Russian Empire, from the Soviet Union to independence in 1991, Ukraine's path has been marked by periods of autonomy and subjugation. The very notion of Ukrainian identity has been challenged, denied, and suppressed, yet it has endured. The Ukrainian people have clung fiercely to their language, culture, and distinct sense of identity. This historical legacy helps explain the fierce resistance of the Ukrainian people against Russian aggression. The relationship between Russia and Ukraine is deeply intertwined, marked by both a shared history and a bitter rivalry. For centuries, Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire, its fate closely tied to that of its larger neighbor. The Soviet period saw greater integration, with Ukraine becoming a key republic within the USSR. However, it was also a time of immense suffering, as millions of Ukrainians died during the Holodomor, the man-made famine of the 1930s. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought a new chapter. Ukraine, along with other former Soviet republics, declared its independence, a move initially welcomed by Russia. However, the seeds of future conflict were already sown, particularly regarding Crimea and Russian military bases on Ukrainian territory. The year 2014 marked a turning point in relations between Russia and Ukraine, shattering the illusion of peaceful coexistence. In February of that year, Russian forces, operating without insignia, seized control of key facilities in Crimea. What followed was a swift and bloodless takeover. A hastily organized referendum, widely condemned as illegitimate by the international community, paved the way for Russia's annexation of Crimea. The annexation of Crimea sent shockwaves through Europe and beyond, signaling a dangerous shift in Russian foreign policy. The West, caught off guard, responded with sanctions, but stopped short of military intervention. The annexation of Crimea was not an isolated incident. Following the Crimean crisis, fighting erupted in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbas region, between Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed separatists. The conflict in Donbas has been a protracted and bloody affair, claiming the lives of thousands of civilians and displacing millions. It has also become a proxy war, with Russia providing military support to the separatists, while Ukraine has received assistance from Western countries. Despite multiple ceasefires and diplomatic efforts, the conflict has dragged on for years, punctuated by periods of intense fighting. Donbas has become a symbol of the human cost of this conflict, a reminder of the devastation wrought by war and the lasting legacy of division and distrust. Section 6. Shifting Sands, Alliances Reforged and New Power Dynamics. The war in Ukraine has had profound geopolitical implications, reshaping alliances and altering the existing world order. NATO, once seen as a Cold War relic, has been revitalized. The alliance has strengthened its military presence in Eastern Europe, deploying troops and equipment to member states bordering Russia. Finland and Sweden, historically neutral countries, abandoned their non-aligned status and joined NATO, further expanding the alliance's reach. The war has also drawn Russia closer to China, with Moscow increasingly turning to Beijing as a partner in trade, investment, and strategic cooperation. The two countries have held joint military exercises and voiced their shared opposition to what they perceive as Western hegemony. Section 7. The Global Ripple Effect. From food security to energy geopolitics. The consequences of the war in Ukraine extend far beyond the battlefield, reverberating across the globe and impacting a wide range of issues, from food security to economic stability. Ukraine, known as the breadbasket of Europe, is a major agricultural producer and exporter, supplying essential grains to many countries around the world. The war has disrupted global food supplies, leading to rising prices and raising concerns about shortages, particularly in developing countries that rely heavily on Ukrainian grain for their sustenance. The conflict has also had a significant impact on energy markets, prompting European countries to seek alternative sources of supply and accelerating the transition to renewable energy, such as solar and wind power. The war has exacerbated existing global challenges, such as climate change, inflation, and supply chain disruptions, highlighting the interconnectedness of the global economy and the fragility of our systems. Think about the impact of this right here in Sao Paulo, on the prices of food and fuel, which directly affect the cost of living for the population. Section 8. The Uncertain Future. Scenarios for Ukraine and the World Order. As the war in Ukraine drags on, the future remains uncertain. The outcome of the conflict will have profound implications not only for Ukraine, but also for the wider international order. One possible scenario is a negotiated settlement, however unlikely it may seem at the moment. Such a settlement would require significant concessions from both sides and would likely involve international guarantees for Ukraine's security. Another possibility is a protracted conflict, with neither side achieving a decisive victory, resulting in continued suffering for the Ukrainian people and further destabilizing the region. A third scenario, though less likely, is a wider conflict involving NATO, with the potential to escalate into a major war between nuclear powers. Is the world prepared for this? Section 9. A Call to Action. Understanding and Navigating a World in Flux. The war in Ukraine is a tragedy for all involved, an open wound that affects not only the combatants, but also innocent civilians. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the fragility of peace, which can be shattered in an instant. It's also a wake-up call, a call to action for the international community. We must show solidarity with the Ukrainian people, providing them with the humanitarian assistance and military support they need to defend their country and their freedoms. We must also hold Russia accountable for its actions, both through sanctions and through international legal mechanisms, to ensure that justice prevails. Beyond the immediate crisis, we must work to build a more just and peaceful world order, based on respect for international law, human rights, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. This requires a collective and sustained effort. The war in Ukraine has shown that the post-Cold War era is truly over, and we are in a new chapter of global history. We are entering a new era defined by complexity, uncertainty, and the resurgence of great power competition. Power dynamics are shifting rapidly. Navigating this new world order will require wisdom, courage, and a renewed commitment to multilateralism, where international cooperation is essential. May we learn from the mistakes of the past and work together to build a better future for all, where peace and justice prevail. What can Brazil and we here in Sao Paulo do to contribute to a more peaceful world? The answer lies in our collective actions and our willingness to make a difference.